Welcome to episode 14 of the Total Sports Northumberland podcast. I'm Jeff Gard, bringing you interviews each week from Northumberland County and beyond. You can find the podcast each week on the Total Sports Northumberland website and stream or download on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. In just a little while, I'll be chatting with Hamilton Tiger Cats offensive lineman Chris Van Zale, who is preparing for his 14th Canadian Football League season. The two-time Grey Cup champion will also chat with my athlete spotlight guest. If you want local sports news from Northumberland County, check out totalsportsnorthumberland.ca. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Keep listening for details on how local athletes can join the podcast. My athlete spotlight guest this week played high school football for the St. Mary Thunder in Cobourg and now is playing at the university level with the Ottawa GGs, James Dumanoir. James, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Congratulations as well. We had a story a while back about you were one of the players that earned East-West Bowl recognition. And even though there wasn't a game this year, I mean, the players that earned that recognition are considered prospects for next year's CFL draft. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, what did it mean to you to get that recognition? I mean, you didn't get to play last year, but it still shows that, you know, your play has been noticed in recent years at the university level.
Yeah, 100%. It's a big recognition for me to receive. We put in a lot of work with the football program in Ottawa. A lot of hours spent during the week training and doing meetings and stuff like that. And since I started football about 6 years ago, I've put in a lot of work. So to be able to receive an award like that, a recognition like that, it was very special for me, for sure.
You weren't born in Cobourg, but you made your way here, especially around the time high school started, or maybe just before. So can you tell me about your background before coming to Cobourg?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born in Edmonton, Alberta. And shortly after I was born, my family moved to Deep River, Ontario, a small town in northern Ontario. I don't know if you know where that is, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's a little small community. So I grew up in Deep River. I went to school in Pembroke, Ontario until grade 9. And then in grade 9, my mom received a job in Port Hope. So we moved out to Cobourg, start my grade 9, and I was going to do my whole high school in Cobourg.
So yeah, when you came to St. Mary's, you joined the football team. Just looking back now, how important was it for you to join that team, especially being in a new community, new school, and even new to high school?
Yeah, 100%. So growing up in a small town like Deep River, I didn't have opportunities to play football. There wasn't many sports opportunities other than like soccer and stuff like that. So for a big guy like me to be able to move to Cobourg and have the opportunity to play football at high school, and as well, I played for the Wolverines in Peterborough. So just the exposure from those two programs was really what allowed me to be able to go to university and play at the university level. So like really fortunate to be able to have had that opportunity and to be in Cobourg to be able to play football for St. Mary's and for Peterborough. Peterborough was huge too. Gave me a lot of exposure to like university programs, right? So that was the biggest thing for me. Because I played for Peterborough, I was able to get talked to by schools like Queen's and University of Ottawa and all that. So that was a really important part of my progress through.
And when you join a football team would be a big team, so it really gave you a chance to meet some new people pretty quickly, I guess.
100%, yeah. Some of the relationships I've gained through football is some of the most important relationships in my life. So I have that to be thankful to as well.
Was it still the traditional football program at St. Mary's when you got there? I know later on they switched to, was it maybe 7-a-side? But was it?
So when I showed up in grade 9, it was already set at 6-a-side. So
6-a-side. Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a difference. You know, it's not like I wouldn't really say it's real football, but it's still like the same positions and like, you know what I mean? You have receivers, you have offensive linemen, you have guys like that. So it's just like kind of like a mini game of football, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. I mean, it was tough in a smaller community to have. They were very successful with running a football program for a number of years, but it's still hard to get that commitment from a large team, I guess, to be able to
100%.
practice every day, because it's not your normal high school team. Football, there's so much involved, I guess, when it comes to plays and just so much to learn.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. Yeah, coming like not just only plays, but like just to be able to facilitate a football team when you got equipment, which is like for football compared to other sports, it's very, very expensive for helmets and stuff like that. On top of that, a football team is not like a 20-person hockey team. Like at the University of Ottawa, we have 110 players on my team. So it's a humongous football. It's a humongous organization. So one, you need the amount of players to be able to facilitate a football team, but you also need the commitment from those guys, right? Football is one of those sports where you got to watch film after your practices. You got to develop your plays. You got to learn your plays. You got to put in so much extra work behind the scenes, not just on the field, that it's super hard to be able to facilitate a football team. But just being able to have 6-man football in Coburg, it was huge.
I know St. Mary's had and has like a great football coach and staff. Can you talk about some of those coaches you had and worked with?
Yeah, absolutely. So first one's Jacques Mailloux. He was an amazing coach that I had for football and at St. Mary's. I actually developed a really good relationship with him off the field too. He was a support role for me going through high school and stuff like that. It wasn't just a football coach. It was someone I could go to his class and talk to him any time of the day. You know what I mean? So he was an amazing guy in high school. Him and also Chris Sebin. Chris Sebin was an amazing coach. All these guys were just able to support you through high school. It wasn't just a thing on the football field, but it was outside of the field. You know what I mean? Outside of the classroom, they were there for support. Ray Heffernan. Ray Heffernan was a huge inspiration. We were there at 6 o'clock in the morning in the hallways, running the hallways. He was pushing us to get better every single week. So, you know, without those guys, I don't know where I'd be right now. But no, they definitely helped me improve and throughout my journey.
When I remember back when you committed to Queens initially, I mean, those guys were there for the signing, right? Like they're so proud of you when you reach a big milestone like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. Having those guys around and as well, Rob Majdell, he was the principal at St. Mary's, but he was also really involved with the football team. He also had a huge impact on my football career so far. All these guys were the ones who really pushed me to go to the next level. In high school, I was really unsure of what I wanted to do. I didn't know if football at the next level was going to be something for me or not. But the way these guys pushed me and they showed me that I had a lot of potential to play at this level. And so, yeah, he had a huge impact on my career for sure.
Did you play any other sports growing up?
So I played rugby at St. Mary's, and that was another great opportunity, a great experience for me in my life. Being able to play on the rugby team for Greg Conway was a great opportunity. And the tours we did, we went to England one year for the Rugby World Cup, New York City a couple of years in a row. Just to be able to have those experiences and opportunities like that, I'm really blessed. Yeah, for sure.
And just in general, what did you love about living in like the Coburg Port Hope area?
So I grew up in Deep River, and not too many people know about Deep River, but it's a very small town, 4,500 people. You know what I mean? One grocery store, no big Walmarts and stuff like that, right? So for me to move to Coburg for grade 9, it was kind of a treat. You know, I got to experience, like, for me, I guess you could say kind of city living, but everything was much bigger on a bigger scale for me, you know? So that was the cool part about it. A lot more people in the community, you know what I mean? A lot more opportunities. So for sports and stuff like that, that was the biggest thing. Moving to Coburg just gave me so many opportunities when it came to sports and training and stuff like that I would have never had if I would have stayed in the small town of Deep River. So that I'm really fortunate for.
How'd you get involved with the Peterborough Wolverines club program?
So when I was playing at St. Mary's, there was a guy on my team, Noah Lefrancois, a really good buddy of mine. He played defensive back, and he's a football fanatic, and he always been since he was young. So he was constantly pressuring me. He's seen my size. He was like, "Man, like you really should come play in Peterborough. You got really a lot of potential, and Peterborough would be a good place for you." So, well, first year he told me that, I was kind of hesitant about it. I didn't really act on anything, and I was really busy in Coburg, rugby and everything like that. I played one summer season with the Saxons. So that year I played with the Saxons. I didn't go play football in Peterborough, but the next year he convinced me to go try out for Peterborough. And when I started training with that team, I really knew that football was going to be something for me.
Did it surprise you the exposure you were getting in Peterborough, like as university teams were all of a sudden reaching out to you?
Yeah, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I remember the first time I was approached by a university team. I was up playing in Aurelia. My dad was there with me. And after the game, we're walking back to the car, and Greg Marshall, who is now I think he's a defensive coordinator for Toronto, but he was at Queens at that time. He was a defensive coordinator at Queens. Greg Marshall walked up to me and my dad, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going? My name's Greg Marshall. It's nice to meet you. Coach for the Golden Gales." And I didn't know who he was, right? Because I'm just a young lad. But my dad, who was a big CFL fan growing up, he knew exactly who Greg Marshall was. So after we stopped talking, Greg Marshall gave me his card, and we said we'd be in contact. And after the conversation ended, my dad was like, just fangirling over him the whole time. He's like, "Do you know who that was? That was Greg Marshall, man." I was like, "Yeah." After that experience there, I realized that there might be something for me in football at the next level for sure.
Were you a big football fan like when you were really young and growing up, like before you started playing?
Yeah, growing up, I would watch a lot of CFL with my dad. We were watching all the time the Alouettes. He was a big Red Blacks fan, but there was no when I was young, there was no Red Blacks team yet, right? So we were watching a lot. We'd go to Alouettes games. I think I've been to like 3 or 4 Grey Cups with my dad. So big CFL fan. Not as much NFL until I grew older. I got into the university scene with all the boys, and they all watch NFL all the time. So that kind of turned me into an NFL fan. But when I was young, really young, it was mostly CFL for me. Big CFL fan.
So yeah, maybe if you want to talk about your favorite other favorite teams and favorite players that you have, whether it's CFL or NFL.
Yeah, well, a big inspiration for me is Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. He plays guard for the Kansas City Chiefs, and especially after this year, what he did, he took a season off to be able to be at home and support his community in the hospitals and stuff like that. Just an amazing man and a huge inspiration to me. You know, if I could be half the football player he is, I'll be content with that because, yeah, he's done a lot, he's accomplished a lot, and to look up to a person like that is huge. Yeah.
So you went to, like I said, you initially went to Queens. You're studying criminology, I believe, and but talk about going to Queens, and then you transferred to Ottawa after that. So how did that kind of all happen?
Yeah, so I originally signed on at Queens and I was going to go study a general arts degree. And I graduated in 2017 out of Coburg. And in April, I graduated in June, and in April, I lost my father to brain cancer.
Oh,
So that was really hard for me. So I ended up going to Queens that next year, and just everything that was going on, you know what I mean, loss, grief, stuff like that. I decided that the best thing for me would be to take a year off school and kind of get myself in check, I guess you could say, and see what was the best situation for me after that. I had a really hard time my first semester, so I was like, go home. I'm gonna go see my mom and try to deal with everything, and then see where I should go from there. And then so after that, I took that year off. I got some help. It really worked out nice. And then I decided that the best fit for me would be to go to the University of Ottawa, closer to my family. I had a pre-existing relationship with my offensive line coach, Carl Tomey, through this guy named Kirk Neff from Peterborough. A really good friend of mine. Kirk Neff was able to start a conversation between me and Carl Tomey, and that really got me onto like U Ottawa in the organization. And ever since then, I've had a great relationship with the both of them. Those two guys have been two large influences in my career for sure.
well, I'm very sorry to hear about your dad.
Appreciate that.
And I mean, so when you mentioned the timeline, you had just signed with
Yeah,
Queens in, I think, maybe February that year.
February. Yeah, you got
And
it.
I remember like your dad was there,
Yeah,
and he must have been so proud of you to sign on to the to play at the university
it
level.
was huge. Yeah, that was a big thing. I was signed on, and like to have him at my signing a couple months before he passed, it was like one of the most special moments I could have. So, you know, I look back on that, and I'm fortunate for all the opportunities I had with him and stuff like that. So.
Was he sick at that time?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he developed the prognosis in June,
Hmm.
and 9 months, 9 days later, he passed away in April.
Wow.
Yeah,
Playing at the university level, what was that like when you first began, and the challenge going from, high school where it wasn't even traditional football, but you played with the club team as well. But what was it like making that jump to the university level?
it's a huge jump for sure. Yeah, like a big difference. You go from playing a sport where it's like people pay to play a community sport, right? Although football is still very competitive, people are playing to go. People are paying to go play there, right? Difference between that and university. University is going to give you money to come play for them, right? So it's pretty much like they own you. You know what I mean? You're theirs now. So um, it's a big jump because like let's say you're playing summer ball, you don't want to make it to a practice. You just say, Coach, I'm not going to be a practicer tonight. You know what I mean? You get to university and you miss a practice. It's like the end of the world. You know what I mean? So yes, it was really hard, but in a way, it taught me a lot. It taught me discipline, taught me, yeah, just how to be disciplined pretty much, and how to be on time for everything, organization, time management, stuff like that. You end up learning a lot.
You actually became quite a versatile player, especially in Ottawa, right? I read you were playing both tackle and guard, so you're moving around as needed. And what did you learn about the importance of, I guess, just being available in that way to your team?
Yeah, for sure. When I first showed up at University of Ottawa, I was weighing at like 350 pounds. So I was a big boy playing on the inside of the offensive line. And then through my training and everything like that, over the next couple of years, I'm down to like 305 right now, 300. So a good weight for a tackle, right? So mainly I shifted outside the line because of my weight loss and stuff like that. My body changes, my body development. But being a versatile player is very important. You know, if you can play guard, center, and tackle, there's no reason why a coach shouldn't dress you for a game, right? The more versatile you are, the more you can help your team out. As well as playing guard and tackle, I was also playing a bit of defensive tackle on goal line. So yeah, the more I can be used everywhere on the field, the better it'll be.
Obviously, it was unfortunate to lose last season. So, what as a team, what were you guys still able to do, even though no games were being played?
Yeah, so COVID was huge. It took a big hit on all of youth sports, I would say, right?
Mhm.
And the biggest thing is teams just had to find ways to capitalize on the opportunity, right? Not the best situation in the world, but you'll be able to see this fall coming up with the season which teams were able to capitalize the most on the opportunities they had, right? So Zoom's a big thing. We actually use Microsoft Teams at University of Ottawa, but we were doing Microsoft Teams meetings, Microsoft Team workouts together. Everyone would be on the Microsoft team. We'd be working out at our houses together. And then any opportunity when the lockdowns lifted and stuff like that we can get in the gym and work out, that's what we did. So personally, I believe at the University of Ottawa, we did the best of what we could with what we had.
Again, this isn't just uh, a sport that happens during the school year. Talk about what you're doing now and the busy schedule that you have.
Yeah, so football is a year-round thing. You know, it's during the summer, during the winter, all year round. During the season, our training schedule is a little bit lessened because you're so busy with games and practices and stuff like that. But once you get outside of the season, the second we come back January 1st for our second semester, it starts picking up there. So we're in the gym 5 to 6 days a week. We're running 2 days a week, and on top of that, this season's a bit different because of COVID. Usually, you can only practice a certain amount of times in the off season. There's like regulations put in place by U Sports, but because this season there's COVID and stuff like that, we had a little bit more opportunity in the off season to be able to practice and get the guys together for some field work and stuff like that. So we're using that to the best of our advantage as we can right now.
So, at this point of the summer, before you get back to school this fall, like what kind of training are you doing?
So right now we're doing we lift 5 days a week. We do a run session 2 days a week, and we're also doing it's kind of like a no padded practice. So you get like a little bit of one-on-ones in, but everything's like really minimalized because of COVID like that. You really got to watch out. But we're getting lots of good work in, that's for sure. It's a really busy schedule.
Great. And like I said, no East-West Bowl game this year, but I mean, you'll be watched when the season gets going again. There'll be regional and national combines. What excites you about the opportunities ahead?
There's lots to be excited for about these opportunities. You know, growing up, I would never even imagine I could be in the position I'm in right now, right? So I'm excited for the opportunities. I'm going to continue to grow as a football player and a man, right? That's the biggest thing for me. Football is more than just a game. It teaches you a lot about life and stuff like that. So I'm excited about those opportunities, the people I'll meet, the things I'll learn. You know, it's gonna be a long road ahead, but I'm sure it's gonna be a fun ride.
And you have the goal to play in the Canadian Football League?
Yeah, that's the goal. If the goal arises, for sure. Yeah. Um, it was always a dream of mine growing up, and then the more I got older, the more I see um, how the Canadian Football League works compared to the NFL and stuff like that. Like, if the opportunity arose, yes, for sure. But right now, my biggest focus is going to be the season coming up, Vanier Cup Championship for the GGs. That's my biggest goal right now.
And just finally, I mean, as you get close to even having that possibility of going through the CFL draft, I mean, your thoughts must be with your dad, considering he was such a big fan of the CFL.
100%. Yeah, a lot of this, it's for me. Obviously, I do this for me because I love football and it's a passion of mine. But a lot of it does stem from my dad. You know, I every day I go in the gym, I work hard, and a lot of the stuff's for him. You know.
Well, James, stick around. You're going to join me for my chat with my next guest. If you know an athlete who should be in the spotlight, go to totalsportsnorthumberland.ca and fill out the form on the athlete spotlight page. They can join me on the podcast to talk about their sports background and also join me to chat with my other featured guest on that episode. My next guest is heading into his 14th Canadian Football League season. He's a two-time Grey Cup champion, and in 2019 won the CFL's Most Outstanding Offensive Lineman Award. Chris Van Zyl. Chris, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to being on here for sure.
So I've also been chatting with James Dumanoir. He played his high school football here in Cobourg, and now he's playing at the university level with the Ottawa GG. So say hi to James.
Hi, James. How you doing?
So James is getting ready for another year with Ottawa, but I mean, next year he's eligible for the CFL draft. He received East-West Bowl recognition this year, so he's considered a great prospect for that. So Chris, just in your own experience, what advice could you give to James just at this point, as he is kind of like a year out from the CFL draft?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was drafted as a defensive lineman, so completely different skill set when I was going through. But over my years, and I mean, I've been playing offensive line now for 14 years. So and maybe a little bit longer just to kind of transition. But as far as offensive linemen go, I mean, I've always found that athleticism has always been one of my greatest assets, and being able to move laterally and change direction and whatnot has always been one of those things that I kind of, I don't know, it's kind of my edge. So being able to move really well is one of those things that guys look for, and that's that explosiveness and getting off the ball and that sort of thing too. I mean, there's a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, your athleticism is something you can control to some extent, and the more athletic you are, the better you're going to be.
Yeah, I know James is going to have more questions for you about that. What was the draft experience like for you? You were actually selected by you were a third-round pick of the Montreal Alouettes.
I remember the going into the draft and going to the combine and whatnot. It was, I mean, my testing measurables weren't like off the chart. It wasn't anything that kind of stood out. It wasn't until I got to one-on-ones and kind of showed what I could do on the field that things kind of changed for me, and I think it improved my stock. So one-on-ones were a chance for me to kind of get on the field and show what I could do. As far as the draft goes, I mean, back in those days, it was done on a laptop, and it was just hit the refresh button a million times and see who's up next. And I remember being in the room with a bunch of the guys at Mac, Jeff Robertshaw, Andrew Jones, who else? I think Jason Araki, Eugene Boachi, a bunch of those guys that had kind of that I had played with for a while, and being in the room with those guys and having the refresh button hit a million times, and yeah, it was pretty cool just to kind of be around friends and see where everybody was going. But we had quite a few guys from that class that ended up going to the CFL, and I played against a few of those guys, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. Can you talk about making that transition from a defensive player to the offensive line after you were drafted?
Yeah, so it took me about 2 camps for them to realize that I was destined for the offensive line. Mark Trestman came up to me in the lines in our stretch lines at the end of my second camp and kind of said, we're going to keep you around, but we wanted to start transitioning you to the offensive side of the ball. Would you be willing to do that? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, I'd never really done it. I'd done it just maybe for a couple practices at Mac, but never really to any real extent. So I dabbled, I worked at it, and I mean, there's a lot more structure to it. It's you're not reacting as much. It's more so you know where you're supposed to be, and you got to use the right tools to get there. So that was a little bit of an adjustment for me, not being as aggressive and kind of sitting back, being a little more patient and a little more tactical with my movements as well. So,
well, in your first couple of years, you were, I believe, mostly on the practice squads, right? Whether that was Montreal and Toronto. So really shows, and you become an impact player for many years, but it really shows the work it takes to earn a spot in the CFL lineup.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, basically from after training camp in '08 to, I think the end of '09 was when I first got on the field around Labor Day. And that was only to dress. And then I didn't end up on the field like starting until like, I think I had like 3 games left in that season. And I got on the field because 2 guys went down the same play. So kind of, and I went into a position, to the right tackle position, that I'd never played in practice before. So just goes to show you have to be versatile. And that's where athleticism comes in. And the more athletic you are, and the more you're capable of doing, and you just keep on giving them reasons to not take you off the field, right?
James, I'm going to give you a chance to ask anything you would like to chat with Chris about.
Yeah, for sure. Just my main question really would be for Chris would be like scouts in general. What are they looking for in an offensive tackle?
I mean, I would assume how guys move, how committed they are to their craft. So techniques and that sort of thing would be important. But I think what it all comes down to usually is athleticism and how well you move with the weight. I mean, there's a lot of guys that can play around 300 pounds or whatever, or in that area anyways, in that realm. And how you can move with that weight on your body, and not so much like strength is something that you can build over years. I mean, I'm still not the strongest guy, but I can stay in front of a guy really well. So I think that would be a measurable they would look for more so than the bench press and what you can squat and all that stuff. I mean, being able to stay in front of a guy and be able to move your feet and be an athlete as opposed to just being a big guy, I think would be something that guys would be looking for.
Are the questions more geared around like your dieting and stuff like that? Being an offensive lineman, you know, eating is really important for us. So,
Yeah.
What do you stick to? Like lots of protein, cut out carbs, stuff like that. Love to know.
Yeah, it's really a combination of everything. I mean, I'm naturally an ectomorph, so I'm supposed to be skinny. So for me to be 300, right now I'm about 305. For me to be that weight and be able to move, it's finding a healthy balance where the protein is to recover, right? So it's important to consume protein, but it's also important to make sure that you have the energy to kind of sustain a certain level of performance as well. So depending on your regimen with your workouts and your running and conditioning and what you're doing on the field as far as like ladder drills and technique, just general technique work. I mean, you may have a higher demand for like your carbs and stuff like that. And I mean, you can never go wrong with greens. The more greens you consume, the healthier your body's going to be. That's just general facts. But having a good multivitamin, fish oils, like stuff like that. I mean, yeah, it's about keeping your body healthy while it's being taxed, right? So whatever your body needs, and everybody's kind of different. You find a way to like keep your body fueled as opposed to just kind of running at a deficit.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
No worries.
And in terms of, again, you've had some great longevity in the CFL. What do you think it not only get there, what does it take to stay there?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I attribute a lot to the staffs that I've been a part of, and I mean, we have great ATs and people that take great care of us. So, I mean, being able to stay on the field is important. What you do in the off season is kind of a little more important because that gets you ready for the rigors of this season, right? So conditioning and stuff is really important. But for me, it's a lot of it is cross training. I mean, generally, I mean, I haven't been able to the last year and a half, but with football, I've always kind of cross trained with hockey. So in the off season, I play like 2-3 days a week, just pick up hockey. I start off real slow on defense and eventually kind of pick up my pace a little bit. And I find the weight of the skates and everything helps keep me quick and nimble. And yeah, I think that helps a lot. A lot of it is repetition on the field too. Just get out on a field and kind of go through your steps. I mean, as an offensive lineman, you're a technician. So the more you practice and the less you have to think about prior to a snap of any play, the better. So you have to take repetition on top of repetition on top of repetition, and be comfortable doing things at a faster level as well. So the quicker you can move and the more comfortable you are with your footwork and different body placements and guys lined up across from you, the better off you're going to be.
I want to ask you about some of your, highlights too. Like 2012 was almost like a breakout year for you, and you were with the Argonauts at the time. You won the 100th Grey Cup at the Rogers Centre in Toronto. Just how much did that experience mean to you?
Oh, it's honestly with the right group of guys, and that's all you're kind of looking for. I mean, being able to play professional football is a privilege, and I know I play for a lot of guys that haven't really gotten the chance to play at this level, and guys that I've kind of passed by, and I think about all those guys when I'm playing, and you get to that point. I mean, when we won the Eastern Final over Montreal, I had an emotional dump. I was teared up, and I was losing it on the field, because you always kind of you always think about getting to the Grey Cup, and then when you finally get there, it's just like, holy, like I have a chance to win a championship. And then when you win the championship, you're on the field in disbelief, and it really didn't sink in till like maybe 2 weeks later, and the emotions started to come out. I'm like, I can't believe I just won the Grey Cup, and it's really special. You look around at all the guys you won it with, and I have memories with all of them, and the celebrations and parades and stuff like that, and you have this ring, but the ring doesn't mean anything close to what the team and the guys around you meant to you at that time. It's pretty special. It's pretty incredible, and my name's on that 100. I think it's 100, and I'm not even sure. I think 7 years old at this point, something like that. So it's I think it's 108 this year, is it not? Yeah, I think so.
I think so, yeah.
So yeah, 108 years old, and my name's on there twice now. So it's pretty incredible.
I was going to say you won again 5 years later, so the 105th Grey Cup, once again with the Argonauts, again over the Stampeders. This time it was in Ottawa. So what was that experience like 5 years later? All of a sudden you're more of a obviously veteran player on the team at that point.
Yeah, it's each one had its own like special, like the absolute, like the setting of the 100th Grey Cup was incredible, because we're at home in Toronto, and I remember running out of the tunnel, and it felt like there's two fans on either side of you just blowing air at you, and then you run out of the tunnel in the 105th Grey Cup in 17, and I was out there for warm up, and there was like some light flurries, like it was just a little bit of snow, and then when we ran out right before the game, I ran out, and it was like I was in a snow globe. Like it was the most magical, like incredible, like you grow up as a kid in Canada playing football in the snow, and as soon as the snow falls, it turns into touch or the tackle football. Really, we're all out in our snowsuits when we're like 10 years old, running around like tackling each other, and you run out on that field in that kind of setting, and it's just like, wow, like crazy how things come full circle. And now I'm playing in a game where you got snowplows running up and down the field just to kind of clear the line so you can see where you're going, and you're slipping all over the field. And yeah, it was like being a kid again. It was incredible. There were challenges, obviously, but winning that game, I mean, and coming back in dramatic fashion, which we did, was pretty incredible as well.
Absolutely. I asked James earlier about being a CFL fan when he was younger, or just even a football fan in general. So what was that like for you to either watch the CFL or NFL, or yeah, just football in general?
Yeah, for me, I've always kind of been a fan of football. My dad and I used to watch Notre Dame games on Saturdays. We'd watch the odd game with my grandfather, my opa. When we used to go over there, we watched Notre Dame on Saturdays, and then we'd go visit my grandparents on the Sunday, and we used to watch Buffalo Bills games at his place. So football's always kind of been a part of our weekends and whatnot as we grew up. special place in my heart, obviously. But we didn't really have football till we got to high school. So I played hockey for, I don't know, like 10 years or so. And I loved hockey, but as soon as I had the opportunity to go play football, I jumped on it. And I wasn't good for the first couple of years, and I got beat up pretty good. I was going through a growth spurt, so I was a little clumsy, and I was kind of finding my legs. And then I had a little bit of growth spurt, and all of a sudden I found my legs, and I kept on working on it, and I trained, and I had some great coaches at Notre Dame that kind of helped me along. And yeah, I turned into a football player, and it's something that I've kind of stuck with. I've found a lot of passion and love for it, and I'm happy to still be playing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you got released by the Argos in 2019, but I believe you got signed by the Tiger Cats the very same day. So, and I mean, you went
Yeah.
on to, play in 17 regular season games, 2 playoff games. You were an all-star for the 3rd time, but just how much did it mean to have for another team to have, such faith in you, I guess, to sign you right away?
Yeah, I mean, it was a no-brainer for me. I live in Burlington, so
Mhm.
the drive to Toronto was a little bit cumbersome, as you may or may not know. It's always a little bit challenging to get in there. So driving into Hamilton is never really an issue for me. It's about 20 or so minutes, and you know what? They welcomed me with open arms, and I couldn't be happier to be with this organization. The manner in which they treat me and they treat all of us, from the top to the bottom, it's pretty remarkable, and it's a pretty special organization, and you realize that as soon as you get here.
When I guess it was almost like a homecoming for you. Like you did, I think, grow up in the area, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm from Font Hill, so about 45 minutes down the road, and yeah, I grew up. I don't remember going to many Ticat games, if any, but we definitely watched them every now and then on the TV. And yeah, I remember watching it and thinking how cool it was to have a Canadian game and have a team just up the road. And yeah, it's always, like I said, football's always kind of been in the house. It's always been around, and it's neat to be playing for this team so close to home. My parents always enjoy coming to games, and they've been following me ever since I started playing CFL, ever since I started playing sports, period. Like 3 years old, I think I was in organized sports. So whether it be hockey or soccer or anything, they would always be there, and they've always been my biggest supporters and fans. And it's quite a privilege to have parents like I do, and to have the support that I've always had. So yeah.
What was the past year like for you? I mean, last year the season got wiped out, unfortunately, but you have a young family now, right? You and your wife have
Yeah.
2 very young kids. So what was it like to get to spend that time at home with them, while I'm sure still missing football a lot?
Yeah, you miss football, but at the same time, I mean, I'm never I'm never gonna wish I worked more or anything like that. And I'm so glad that I got to spend as much time as I did with my family. And I really jumped into it and was immersed in it. I mean, I spent a lot of time with my son, while my wife was taking care of my daughter, who for the first little bit didn't want a whole lot to do with me because he was just attached to mom like Velcro. So I just spending a lot of time with my son, and who's 2.5 now. So he's a lot of fun, and we go on adventures and stuff like that. And every day was something different. And yeah, it was really nice to kind of recharge the batteries and get stay attached to my family. And I mean, have football kind of looming and now be back. It's incredible. I'm thrilled to be back and playing football. And I love our group here. I love, this is like my second extended family. It's just away from home. This is the other side of the family. So um, I do miss them while I'm here, but I'm fortunate enough to be close enough to home that I can drive home every night, and I get to put them to bed. And that's special for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask you what it's like returning after a year of not playing, like just how much did that both affect you and like maybe even just the positives, I guess, or like in terms of recharging the body and maybe even the mind a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity to decompress a little bit. Um, whether it be the joints. I mean, I'm not getting any younger, so an opportunity like that to decompress. And at one point, I was down to 273, and I unloaded the joints a little bit, um, and then with the prospect of football coming back, I started gaining again, and worked and trained, and yeah, I got back up to 305, so about 30 pounds.
At this point in your career, like, do you know how long you want to keep playing for?
No, I'm going year by year now. It's we get to a certain point where it's just like, yeah, how much are you willing to endure? And for me, it's not even so much about the pain or anything like that. It's because pain's inevitable. Like, it's football. We're in car accidents every game, every day, when we play. It's that's essentially what we do. So that's being sore in pain. It's inevitable. It's what you feel in your heart. I'll tell you right now, if I didn't absolutely love what I'm doing, I wouldn't be doing it. I'm enjoying being back here with the guys. I'm enjoying for the amount I practiced and whatnot. I really enjoyed being back out in the field and just kind of being immersed in football again. It's what I love, and I still absolutely love it. So when I stop loving it, that's when I'll walk away.
The Grey Cup is in Hamilton this year, so there must be a lot of excitement going on around the team this year.
Yeah, I really haven't seen it. I mean, we just got out of lockdown, so I haven't really been able to see what's kind of going on around us. And I'm in quarantine right now. You kind of feel a little bit of buzz, but I mean, we haven't really gotten there yet. We're locked into the day to day and making sure that we're ready for the next game that we're playing, and we're trying to kind of block out what's down the road a little bit, So yeah, I would say there's some buzz, but I mean, our expectation is to win the next day and win the day today, and that's about all we're focusing on right now.
Yeah. What does excite you about this team and the season ahead?
Oh, geez. Just getting to play competitive football again, really. I mean, there's no real complicated answer to that one. It's just getting back out in the field and playing someone other than ourselves. I mean, playing Toronto, playing on Labor Day, like that's a pretty special game to play. And as a player, it's you go out there, and I've been a part of that rivalry basically the entire time I've been playing, whether it be on the Toronto side or the Hamilton side. So yeah, it's a pretty special game, but there's a lot of excitement as far as just getting out there and playing somebody other than ourselves now.
Yeah, I meant to ask you too, with one of my previous questions, like in terms of Grey Cups you haven't played in, are there any from back in the day that are favorites of yours? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No, I don't I don't remember.
Yeah,
I don't remember too many Grey Cups that I've watched. I mean, I've watched a lot of Grey Cups, but I don't really remember any that other than the ones I've played in that.
Yeah.
And I mean, we lost the last one, so it's I've tried to wipe that as best as I can from my mind. Although you kind of have to keep it there to motivate you to move you forward, right? So,
but yeah,
you learn from it, and yeah, that's about it.
It was just a big deal when you were younger to watch it with your family.
Honestly, we watched some sports, but we didn't watch a ton. The only thing we really watched were Notre Dame games and Buffalo Bills games. We didn't watch a ton of sports. Like, we'd rather be outside playing or whatever. So there wasn't a lot of TV. And it's probably a little bit different than it is today, where I mean, you got TVs everywhere in the house generally, or at least more than one. Whereas back in the day, you'd be lucky to have one, maybe two color TVs in your house. And I mean, I'm old, right? So it's a little bit different. So
Just finally, I want to ask you about, the charity causes you're involved in, because you do a lot in the community. And even, I think it was back in February, you had the Sleepless in Our Cities event. And I want to ask you about that, because like homelessness is something that is felt everywhere and affects everywhere. So you slept in your car overnight. It was a United Way event, I believe, and just to raise money and awareness. Talk about that and getting that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that, I mean, before they mentioned it to me, you know it exists. You see people on the street when you're driving either through Hamilton or Toronto or wherever, and initiatives within the cities that I play, or even in Burlington where I live. I've always kind of kept near and dear to my heart. It's always important. I mean, perspective is one of the greatest weapons you can exercise in life, and having some perspective and understanding how privileged you are and how lucky you are to be in your particular situation, to be born into the family you were born into, and whatnot. And every opportunity I get where I can help out and give back to the communities, either where I play or live, or anybody in general, I jump at. So when this one came up in particular, I mean, I'm like, well, geez, it sounds like it sounds like it would be pretty tough, and it honestly, without a doubt, was. But to know that you're doing it one night and you're raising money for people that have to do it every night, I mean, that grants you some pretty great perspective. And yeah, I would be lying if I said I enjoyed it, but at the same time, I enjoy the opportunity to do something for somebody else. And I think we need to do that more as a society, and give back, and try and pick each other up, as opposed to kind of breaking each other down, or letting each other stay down. It's if you can help, and if you can't, then yeah, everybody kind of gets that. But there's a lot of people that have the means to help and don't do it. So yeah, I think it's great when you can and you do.
James, do you have anything else you want to ask, or just say?
Oh, I'm good. I appreciate you coming on though, Chris.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, thank you guys for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. I wish you well. If there's anything that ever comes up, and you can always reach out to me. I have my my Instagram, my Facebook, and I'd be more than willing to answer any questions you have. So I'm always here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's great. Well, thank you so much again, Chris. Best of luck this season, and it's going to be great to see you back on the football field.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you again to my guests, and I hope you enjoyed listening to this week's episode of the Total Sports Northumberland podcast.